even though I was only 8 years old when it happened. It's strange how memories from childhood blur together, but certain moments stay sharper than anything else. This one feels like it never faded at all. Sometimes I think it even gets clearer as I get older, like my mind keeps polishing it instead of letting it go. Back then, my family lived in a small, creaky house on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. My parents said it had character, but even as a kid, I felt something heavy in that place. The hallway lights always flickered, the stairs always groaned, and at night, you could hear the walls crack like someone was pressing their ear to the other side. I remember lying awake sometimes, trying to figure out if those sounds were normal. But when you're 8, you try not to think too hard about things that scare you. That night started like any other. I'd been playing in my room, lining up my toys along the far wall. I was a quiet kid, preferred my own little world. My parents said I talked to my toys a lot, but honestly, it never felt like I was talking to them. It felt like I was talking to someone else across the room, someone I could never quite see. I didn't question it back then. Kids just accept things. The sun went down and the house got colder. My mom told me to get ready for bed, and I remember the floor feeling freezing under my feet as I walked to brush my teeth. When I turned off the bathroom light, the hallway felt darker than usual. Not the normal dark, but this thick kind that seemed to swallow up the corners. I hurried back into my room and closed the door behind me. But as soon as it clicked shut, I heard it. A soft tapping. 3 slow taps on the door. Light. Careful. Like someone using just the tips of their fingers. I froze. My mind immediately thought it was my dad messing with me, trying to scare me. He used to play little pranks sometimes, though never at night. I whispered, "Dad," but got nothing back. Just silence. Silence so still it felt like the room was holding its breath. I backed away from the door and climbed onto my bed. My heartbeat felt loud in my chest, like it didn't belong to me. The tapping stopped for maybe a minute, and I started to think I imagined the whole thing. But then it came again. This time, slower, closer, like the sound was coming from lower on the door, near the floor. I remember pulling my legs up, hugging them tight, staring at the crack under my door. That was when I saw it, a shadow, not a full shape, but movement. Something blocking the hallway light. Something crouched low, something that wasn't breathing loud, but I swear I could hear the faintest exhale. I held my breath without even meaning to. My chest hurt from how tight I was holding everything in. Then the shadow shifted, and for just a second, I thought I saw a hand slip under the crack. Small, thin, like a child's, but it moved in a way no child ever moved. Slow, stretching, the fingers long, like feeling blindly for something to grab. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Just a tiny sound stuck at the back of my throat. Then I heard it whisper my name. Soft, right against the crack in the door. That was the moment I realized whatever was tapping wasn't my dad, and it wasn't any kid from the neighborhood either. It knew my name, and it wanted me to open the door. I didn't move for what felt like forever. I just stared at that thin strip of darkness beneath the door, waiting to see if the hand would come back. My breathing was so shallow, it barely made any sound, and every few seconds my body jolted with a small shiver I couldn't control. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that maybe it was just the house settling or a trick of the light. But even at 8 years old, I wasn't stupid. I knew what I saw didn't belong in my house. Eventually, the shadow under the door pulled back, the whisper stopped, and the tapping finally faded into silence. I stayed there curled up on my bed, staring, listening for even the smallest sound. But nothing happened for the rest of the night. At some point I must have dozed off without meaning to, because the next thing I remembered was sunlight slipping through my curtains and the sound of my mom calling me to breakfast. For a few hours, I almost convinced myself it had just been a dream. Kids have vivid imaginations, right? That's what everyone says. But the fear lingered in a way dreams never do. It sat in my chest like a knot I couldn't loosen. Things only started getting worse after that. Over the next few days, I kept hearing little noises late at night. More tapping. Sometimes on the walls, sometimes on the floorboards just outside my room. One time I heard footsteps in the hallway, soft and uneven, like someone dragging their feet. Every time I sat in bed listening, my heart would pound so hard it hurt. I'd hold my breath without noticing, and when I finally exhaled, it felt shaky, unsteady. I tried telling my parents, but they brushed it off. "It's an old house," my dad said. "Houses make noises." My mom just smiled gently and told me maybe I was having bad dreams. Maybe I'd been reading scary books again. But I wasn't. I didn't even like scary things back then. One night, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed my toy box against the door before going to bed, thinking the extra weight might help me feel safer. For the first time in a while, I felt like I could sleep. But around midnight, the tapping returned. Except this time, instead of the soft tapping I'd heard before, it was like something was dragging its fingers across the door. Slow, scratching lightly, like it was tracing shapes I couldn't see. My whole body locked up. I listened as it dragged across the wood again and again, my breath trapped somewhere high in my throat. Then I heard it whisper my name again, but it didn't sound like it was right at the door anymore. It sounded like it was on the other side of the room. That didn't make sense. The door hadn't opened. The toy box was still pressed against it. I could see it clearly in the dim moonlight creeping through my curtains, but the whisper was behind me. Close, too close. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My eyes stayed locked on the door as I tried to convince myself it was the house again, or maybe my own imagination. But the whisper wasn't like anything I could imagine. It was quiet but sharp, like it was pressed right against my ear. I remember squeezing my eyes shut, trying to think of something else, anything else. But then the bed dipped slightly behind me. The mattress tilted just enough for me to feel the shift of weight, as if something had climbed onto it, as if something was sitting right there. I didn't dare move. My heartbeat was so fast, it made my whole body shake. I could hear my pulse in my ears, loud and panicked. I felt the air behind me change, like something was leaning close, breathing slow and steady. It stayed there for a long time, long enough that I started to cry silently into my pillow, terrified that even the smallest sob would set it off. Eventually, the pressure on the bed lifted. The air behind me felt empty again, and the whisper faded. When I finally turned around, slowly, cautiously, nothing was there. But on the wall above my bed, scratched faintly into the paint, were 4 long lines, like fingernail marks. I couldn't explain that. I still can't. I don't know how long I sat there on the floor. It could have been minutes. It could have been an hour. All I remember is the way the room felt like it was shrinking around me, and the air tasted stale and cold, like I was breathing inside an old wooden box buried underground. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My legs felt numb, and every time I blinked, I swore I could see the shape of the boy's face flash behind my eyelids, the same face I used to see pressed against the window years ago. When I finally stood up, my knees cracked so loud it echoed through the room. I forced myself to look toward the corner where the boy had been standing. Dust, just dust. Boxes stacked the same as before. No footprints, no marks, nothing disturbed. It made me feel even worse, like the room was gaslighting me. I backed out slowly, keeping my eyes on that corner until I felt the hallway carpet under my feet. And that's when I heard it again. The humming. But this time, it wasn't coming from the attic. It was coming from downstairs. Soft, low, almost like someone humming to soothe a child. My throat went dry, because I recognized the melody. It was the same tune my mom used to hum whenever I had nightmares. She'd sit on the edge of my bed, running her hand up and down my back. I could almost feel it again, except my mom had been dead for 8 years. I took one step down the stairs. The humming stopped. The silence that followed felt so thick, I swear it had weight. I could hear my own breathing, loud and uneven. The house felt colder suddenly, like something had opened a door I couldn't see, or walked through a wall. Halfway down the stairs, the floorboard near the front door popped. Not loudly, just a soft shift like someone putting weight on it. I froze. My heart thudded so hard I felt it in my teeth. Another step, creak, slow, deliberate, like someone walking barefoot. My mind flashed back to being 8 years old again, lying in bed while that boy's reflection smiled at me from the dark. I'd been so sure back then that he wanted me to follow him outside. And now, here I was, an adult, still hearing his footsteps. I forced myself to walk the rest of the stairs. Every shadow looked wrong. Too long, too still. I checked the living room. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. I even checked behind the curtains, which I regretted instantly because for a split second the fabric brushed my arm and I almost screamed. Nothing. No one. But as I turned back toward the stairs, something caught my eye. The closet door, the one right by the entryway, was slightly open. Not wide, just enough for a sliver of darkness to peek through. I didn't remember leaving it open, and I never left it open when I was a kid either, because that was the closet where the boy used to hide. My pulse hammered in my ears as I reached out. My hand hovered over the doorknob. I could hear something faint behind the door. Breathing, slow, controlled, like whoever was inside didn't want to be heard. I stepped back. For the first time since I returned to the house, I actually considered running straight out the front door and never looking back. But something made me stay. Not bravery, not curiosity. Something colder, like the feeling you get when someone is staring at you and you know looking away will make it worse. I pulled the door open. The closet was empty, completely empty, but the smell inside wasn't right. It didn't smell like old coats or wooden shelves. It smelled like damp dirt and something sour like soil freshly turned over. I staggered back, gagging, and then I noticed it on the floor. Small footprints, not adult-sized, not mine, child-sized, fresh, pressed into the wooden boards as if someone with wet feet had been standing there moments before. I followed the trail with my eyes. The prints led straight out of the closet, across the entryway, and up the stairs. Each one looked darker than the last. They ended at the top step, right in front of the attic door. I stared up the staircase, my breath shaking so hard I could barely keep quiet. And as I looked toward the attic, the door moved, just a little. The same slow swing it used to make when someone inside pushed it open. I don't know what I saw in the space behind that door. A shadow, a shape, a small hand. I don't know. And maybe I don't want to know, because whatever it was, it moved. And then I heard that same humming again, right behind me this time. I ran. I didn't even grab my phone. I don't remember locking the door. I just ran until my legs burned and I couldn't breathe. I haven't been back since. The house is still there, still empty, still waiting. I keep telling myself I imagined it all, that it was just childhood memories twisting into something darker. But every now and then, when the nights are quiet enough, I hear humming outside my window. The same tune my mom used to hum. And sometimes, I swear, I see small footprints leading toward my door. I'll never forget that night, mostly because it forced me to remember something I spent my whole life trying to forget. Something from when I was a kid. Something I never told anyone because even now it sounds too strange to say out loud. It started a few weeks ago when I moved back into my childhood home. My parents had long since retired and left the place to me, and I thought staying there for a while would help me save money. At first, everything felt familiar in a comforting way, the creaky stairs, the smell of the old wooden cabinets, even the way the hallway lights flickered a little before fully turning on. But the comfort faded quickly after the first night. I had just finished unpacking when I heard it. Soft footsteps upstairs, not heavy enough to be an adult. More like a child running lightly from one room to another. The house settled sometimes, sure, but this wasn't settling. These were steps, actual quick steps. I remember holding my breath, waiting to hear them again. When I didn't, I tried to convince myself it was just the wood reacting to the temperature change. Houses do that, right? That night, I slept in my old room. Everything was quiet for a while until the ceiling above me made a small thump. Then another, then something like a dragging sound. Slow, unsteady. My heartbeat rose so fast, I could feel it in my throat. I kept staring at the ceiling as if I could see through it. The dragging continued for a full minute before stopping completely. I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I checked the attic. I expected dust, boxes, maybe a rat. Instead, everything looked exactly how we had left it when I was a kid. But the moment I stepped closer to the far corner of the attic, the air changed. It felt colder up there, like the temperature dropped several degrees in a single step. And then I heard something behind me, a faint whisper. Just one soft exhale of sound, enough to raise every hair on my arms. I turned so fast I almost fell, but nothing was there. Just sunlight pressing through the small attic window. I told myself I was tired, that my brain was filling in blanks, but there was something else too. A feeling I hadn't felt in years. Like someone was watching me from behind a doorway. The same feeling I used to get when I was little. I forced myself back downstairs. But before I shut the attic door, I noticed something on the inside panel. Small marks, scratches. They weren't from an animal. They were too uniform, too deliberate, almost like someone had dragged their fingernails downward. That's when a memory hit me so hard, I had to grab the railing. A memory I didn't want. A memory of lying in bed as a child, hearing tapping sounds from the attic at night. Back then, I always thought it was just the house settling. But now I wasn't so sure. Because last night, when I tried to sleep again, something pressed lightly against my bedroom door. Not knocking, just resting there, like a small hand. The next night was worse. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that old houses make weird noises all the time. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving around upstairs. Something small, something patient. I left the hallway light on before going to bed. It flickered the way it always had, giving that soft buzzing hum that used to lull me to sleep as a kid. But this time the sound only made my skin crawl. I lay there staring at my door, trying to focus on my breathing, trying to keep it slow and steady. It didn't work. The more I tried to calm myself, the louder my heartbeat felt, echoing inside my chest like someone knocking from within. Sometime after midnight, I heard it again. Light footsteps on the second floor. This time they were directly outside my room. The wood creaked softly under the weight, and I felt this strange pressure in the air, like someone was standing there, listening to me breathe. I didn't dare move. The footsteps stopped right at my door. I could tell by the way the floor dipped just barely, the wood shifting with the kind of weight a child might have. And then something slid across the floor, a soft, slow scrape, like fingers moving along the crack under the door, searching. I pressed my hand against my mouth to stop myself from making any sound. I could feel my breath pushing against my palm, hot and shaky. The scraping stopped, and I thought maybe it had gone away. But then I heard breathing, not mine. A faint, soft inhale, a small exhale, like the breath of a child who's trying not to be heard. That was when my memories rushed back again. When I was around 7 years old, I used to wake up to the sound of something tapping under my bed. It never scared me back then. I always assumed it was just pipes or the house settling. But some nights, the tapping would stop the moment I moved. And other nights, I could swear I heard it crawl away. I tried to forget about it as I grew older. It felt like one of those half-dream things kids imagine. But now, hearing that breathing on the other side of my door, those old childhood nights didn't seem like imagination anymore. When morning finally came, I opened my door slowly. The hallway looks normal, too normal, but something small was lying on the floor just outside my room. At first I thought it was a piece of dirt or a nail, but when I picked it up, my stomach dropped. It was a baby tooth, an old one, yellowed at the edges. And it wasn't mine. I had all of my childhood teeth stored in a little plastic box downstairs. That was the moment I realized something had been here long before I came back. Something that never left. Something that remembered me. And when the lights flickered again later that evening, I swear I heard a soft whisper coming from the attic. It said my name. I didn't sleep at all that night. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the attic door at the end of the hallway. It always hung slightly open, just enough to see darkness behind it. The kind of darkness that feels too thick to be normal, like it's waiting. All day I tried to convince myself to leave the house, but something kept me there. Maybe it was denial. Maybe it was the part of me that needed answers after bearing this fear for so long. By evening, the sun fell behind the trees, and the house slipped into that dim, gray hour where shadows look alive. That's when I heard it again. The breathing, except this time, it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside my room. It was so quiet at first that I thought it was just my own breath bouncing back at me. But then I noticed the rhythm was off. Mine was fast and shaky. The other was slow, almost curious, like something was studying the way I breathed. I froze, listening. The sound was coming from under the bed. I got down on my knees, my hands shaking so badly I accidentally tapped the floor. The moment my finger touched the wood, the breathing stopped, not faded. Stopped, like whatever was there had snapped its attention toward me. My heart hammered so hard I thought it would burst. Every instinct in me begged me to stand up and run, but I stayed there, frozen, because I realized something terrifying. I could hear it shifting, not crawling. Shifting, like a small body repositioning itself in the dark. as if trying to get a better look at me. The springs of the mattress above it groaned quietly. Then something brushed the underside of the bed frame, soft, like fingertips. I jerked back and scrambled across the room, keeping my eyes locked on the floor. I didn't look away for a second. I couldn't. It felt like the moment I blinked, something would crawl out. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time felt strange. Eventually, the house fell completely silent again, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I finally gathered enough courage to stand and back slowly toward the door. That was when I saw something that made my stomach twist. A small handprint on the lower corner of the door, but it wasn't dusty or smeared. It was fresh, like a child had pressed their hand there only moments before. The size of the hand was what unsettled me most. It looked like it belonged to a kid no older than 5. I packed a bag and left that night. I didn't turn off the lights. I didn't check the attic. I didn't look under the bed. I just walked out and didn't look back. I stayed with a friend for a few days before coming back in the daylight to grab what I could. Nothing looked disturbed. Not the door, not the floor, not the bed. I started wondering if my mind had twisted the whole thing. If maybe stress had made me see and hear things that weren't really there. I almost convinced myself of that. Almost. But last night, after settling into my new apartment far away from that house, I found something outside my bedroom door. A baby tooth. The same yellowed edge, the same size, and this time, I heard the breathing again, right behind me. It's the first childhood memory that still wakes me up sweating. I was around 8 years old, living in a small house at the end of a quiet street. Nothing about the place looked scary, but at night, it always felt like the walls were listening. My parents worked late, so I spent a lot of evenings alone, trying to keep myself busy with cartoons or books until they came home. It started with the footsteps, soft ones, too soft to be an adult, but too steady to be an animal. I remember sitting on the floor of my room, coloring in a book, when I heard them outside my door, a slow tap across the hallway. I froze, listening. The house creaked all the time, but this wasn't the wood settling. These were steps, small ones. I tried calling out for my mom, even though I knew she wouldn't answer. The footsteps stopped the moment I spoke. The silence after was worse than the sound itself. I could feel my heartbeat thumping in my throat. The air felt thicker, like something was blocking the hallway light from slipping under my door. After a while, I worked up enough courage to crawl closer and press my ear to the wood. I don't know why I did that. Kids do stupid things when they're scared. At first, I didn't hear anything, but then a faint whisper drifted through. It wasn't words, more like someone breathing just a little too close. A slow inhale, a shaky exhale. I pulled back so fast I almost fell over. I remember sitting there on the floor, hugging my knees, forcing myself not to cry. Crying felt like the kind of thing that would make whatever was out there more interested in me. I waited. Minutes passed. The breathing faded. Or maybe it didn't. I couldn't tell anymore because my own breath had turned loud and uneven, practically echoing off the walls. Eventually, I crawled into bed, pulling the blanket over my head, even though it was warm. I thought if I just stayed still long enough, everything would stop. But as I began to drift into that half-sleep kids fall into so easily, I heard the sound again. Not in the hallway this time, just under the bed. A small hand brushed the wooden frame, dragging slowly along it like it was feeling around for a way up. For a few seconds, I was too scared to even breathe. I remember clutching the blanket so tight my fingers hurt. The sound under the bed was slow and deliberate, like whoever or whatever was there wasn't in a hurry. It almost felt playful. The soft scrape of tiny fingers against the wood made my skin prickle. I didn't dare peek over the edge of the mattress. I was terrified that if I moved even an inch, it would know exactly where I was. I kept telling myself it had to be the house, or maybe a raccoon had somehow gotten inside. But raccoons don't whisper, and they don't move slowly enough for you to feel them thinking. That's what it felt like something was thinking beneath me, waiting. After what felt like forever, the scraping stopped. The silence was so heavy I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, pounding fast and uneven. I tried to listen for breathing again, but I couldn't tell if the soft exhale I heard was mine or not. Every noise felt doubled, echoing inside my head. Then the mattress dipped. Not a lot, just the tiniest shift, like a small weight had pressed against the underside. I bit my lips so hard I tasted metal. My whole body locked up. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I don't even think I breathed for a full 10 seconds. The dip lifted, then pressed again, like something testing how far it could push. I couldn't take it anymore. I threw the blanket off me and bolted from the bed, sprinting to my bedroom door so fast my feet barely touched the floor. The moment I yanked it open, the hallway light washed over me, and I finally gasped for air. For a second, I thought I heard something scuttle back under the bed, but I didn't stop to check. I ran into the living room and turned on every light I could reach. I stayed there, sitting on the couch with my knees pulled up, trying to convince myself I had imagined the whole thing. Kids have wild imaginations. That's what adults always say when they don't want to think too hard about what's possible. I kept telling myself that over and over, while the shadows stretched across the floor. Eventually, my parents came home, talking and laughing like nothing was wrong. I wanted to tell them what happened, but the words wouldn't come out. It felt like if I talked about it, I'd make it real. So I just sat there quietly as they asked why all the lights were on. I slept in their room that night, but even then, I struggled to close my eyes. Every time I drifted off, I imagined a small hand pushing up through the mattress, feeling around for me again. I thought that was the end of it. But the next night, something worse happened. I'll never forget how the second night felt heavier, like the house somehow knew I was scared. Even the air felt colder when I walked to my room. My parents told me to stop being dramatic, that I was old enough to sleep in my own bed, and I didn't want to argue. But the moment I stepped inside, every instinct in me screamed not to close the door. Still, I did. Slowly, regretfully. The room looked normal at first. Nothing moved, nothing whispered. The space under the bed was just a dark line across the floor. I turned on my little lamp and climbed into bed, keeping my feet tucked close to me. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling, waiting for any sound. For a while, there was nothing but my own breathing. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I remember is waking up to the feeling of the mattress shifting again. But this time, it wasn't gentle. It was like something slammed against the bottom of it. The whole frame rattled. My eyes shot open, and my throat tightened so fast I couldn't even scream. Then came the breathing. Not faint anymore, not slow. It was fast, frantic, raspy, like something excited. Something inches below me. I pressed myself into the headboard, shaking so hard the bed frame squeaked. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to move. But my lamp flickered, and the moment the room dimmed for half a heartbeat, something brushed the underside of the mattress again, like a hand dragging along the fabric. My breath hitched. Then I heard my name, not loud, not whispered, but spoken. A small voice, like a child imitating me, like it had listened to me for a long time. It said my name slowly, stretching the last syllable, sounding almost curious. I tore myself out of the bed so fast I fell when I hit the floor. My knees scraped against the wood, but I didn't care. I crawled toward the door, grabbing the handle and shaking it, because for some reason it wouldn't open. It felt stuck, jammed, like something on the other side was holding it closed. I don't know how long I struggled with it, but suddenly it gave way, and I tumbled into the hallway. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see anything reaching out from under the bed. I just sprinted into my parents' room and shook them awake, crying too hard to even explain. My dad got up and checked my room. I waited behind him, clutching the back of his shirt. He turned on the lights, stood there, looked around. Nothing. No one under the bed. No signs of anything being touched. He told me I'd had a nightmare. Told me kids imagine things. Told me nothing could fit under that bed anyway. But here's what still bothers me. The next morning, when I finally worked up the nerve to go back into my room, I noticed something on the floor right where my bed frame touched the wall. A long, thin scratch, like something had dragged its nails upward. And that night, the voice didn't come back. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night now, even as an adult, I swear I hear breathing somewhere close to the floor, not under the bed, just nearby, like it's waiting for me to sleep deeply enough again, like it remembers me, and it's still deciding whether it wants to crawl out. I was 8 years old when I first realized that some memories don't fade just because you want them to. There are things from that age I barely remember, like old toys or birthday parties. But that one night hangs in my mind with a sharpness that still makes my chest tighten. It crept up on me so quietly that at first I thought I imagined it. The house my family lived in back then was old, the kind that made noises even when nothing was happening. Floors creaked on their own, pipes clicked inside the walls, and the wind seemed to know exactly how to whistle through the thin cracks around my bedroom window. I was used to it. Every kid who grows up in an old house learns to ignore those sounds. But that night, something about the quiet felt wrong, not peaceful, just waiting. I had gone to bed early because school was starting again after a short break. I remember lying on my side, staring at the glow of my nightlight reflecting off the wall. My breathing had started to slow, and I was hovering on that edge between awake and asleep when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft ones, too light to be my dad's, too slow to be my mom's. At first, I thought it was my sister sneaking around, but the steps never passed my door. They just stopped right in front of it. My heart started beating faster, loud enough that I could feel it in my throat. I held my breath, listening, waiting for the door to open or the footsteps to move again. But nothing happened. It stayed silent, like whoever was there was listening too. After a minute or two, I forced myself to breathe. I told myself it was just the house settling or maybe a pet walking around. But we didn't have any pets back then. And I knew the difference between the house making noise and the feeling of someone standing just inches away from me on the other side of a thin wooden door. I eventually pulled the blanket up to my chin and turned away from the door, hoping sleep would come quickly. But as I started to drift off, I heard a faint, rhythmic tapping. Not on the window, not on the wall, on my bedroom door. Just 3 slow taps, not knocking, not asking, almost like it was testing something, testing me. I froze, every muscle in my body locked up at once, like my brain was trying to keep me from moving or making a sound. The tapping wasn't loud, but in the stillness of the hallway, it felt sharp, deliberate. I waited for it to happen again, counting the seconds by the sound of my heartbeat thudding in my ears. But nothing followed, just the quiet. I remember slowly rolling onto my back, staring up at the faint glow on the ceiling from my nightlight. I kept telling myself I must have imagined it. Kids hear things all the time, right? Then, as if answering my thoughts, the tapping came again. 3 slow taps, this time softer, closer to the bottom of the door. My breathing went shallow. I could feel the air hitching in my chest, barely going in or out. I didn't dare call out for my parents. Something inside me whispered that doing so would make whatever was out there react, like acknowledging it would be some kind of invitation. I don't know why I felt that way. 8-year-olds don't think logically in moments of fear, but that warning in my head felt too real to ignore. The tapping stopped, but I heard something else. A faint scrape, like fingernails dragging lightly down the door. Not scratching, just tracing. I felt my eyes sting with tears, but I didn't move. Couldn't move. The sound traveled down, then up again, almost experimental, like it was feeling the shape of the door that separated us. Then silence again. I don't know how much time passed, but eventually, exhaustion pulled me under, and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. When morning came, sunlight spilling through my window, everything looked so normal that for a moment I questioned if the whole thing had been a dream. But when I pushed my blankets aside and got out of bed, I noticed something I had missed before. 3 small marks on the bottom edge of the door, faint but real, too low for an adult's reach, too narrow for anything heavy. They weren't scratches exactly, more like shallow impressions, as if someone had pressed something hard against the wood. I didn't say anything to my parents. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want them to think I was imagining things. Maybe I didn't want to know the explanation. For the next couple of nights, nothing happened. No footsteps, no tapping. I tried to convince myself it had been a one-time thing, just a combination of tiredness and the house being old. But on the 4th night, I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not mine, not outside, inside my room. Slow, steady, coming from somewhere near the foot of my bed. I didn't open my eyes at first. I was too afraid that if I did, I'd see something I could never forget. So I lay there, keeping my breathing as quiet as possible, hoping the sound I heard was just my imagination. But it wasn't. The breathing had a rhythm, a weight to it, like whoever or whatever it belonged to had lungs and mass and presence. It was real enough that I could almost feel it shifting the air in the room. My eyes finally opened a sliver, just enough to see the faint outline of my furniture in the dim light. Everything looked normal, but I could still hear it. A low inhale, a slow exhale. It wasn't coming from the doorway or the window. It was too close for that, too close to ignore. I tightened my grip on the blanket, pulling it just under my eyes. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might shake the mattress. I knew if the breathing got any closer, I would scream. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would just freeze again, like before. That awful helplessness was creeping back into my chest. Then the breathing stopped, not like it faded away. It stopped instantly, like someone holding their breath on purpose. Silence filled the room, heavy and thick. I waited, counting the seconds. I don't know how many went by before something new happened. There was the faintest dip on the edge of the mattress, as if someone had pressed a hand into it. Not enough to make the bed move a lot, but enough that I felt it through the blankets. I almost stopped breathing myself. The pressure stayed for a moment, then lifted. Footsteps, soft, uneven, almost dragging, moved across the room. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just stared at the wall until the sound reached the door. The tapping returned just once, like a single goodbye. The door creaked open on its own, a slight whine of the hinge, and then nothing. No more steps, no more breathing. I stayed awake until morning. When the sun finally came through the window, I sat up and saw something near the foot of my bed, a small shape on the floor. I thought it was a toy at first, but when I picked it up, my stomach dropped. It was a child's handprint, tiny, dusty, like it had been pressed in ash or dirt, and it wasn't mine. To this day, I still hear tapping on some nights. Never loud, never aggressive, just familiar, like it remembers me, like it's waiting for me to open the door, the way I never did back then. I don't know if it wants to come back in, or if it never left. I don't know why this memory came back to me recently, but once it did, I couldn't shake it off. It was something that happened when I was around 9 years old. Something I spent years convincing myself I imagined, but every time I think about it now, I can still feel the same cold weight in my chest that I felt that night. I grew up in an old house my parents rented because it was cheap. The floors were uneven and creaked even when no one was walking. The windows rattled when the wind blew. But the basement was the worst part. My mom used it for storage, but for some reason she let me keep some of my toys down there too. I used to play near the bottom of the stairs because that was the only spot where the light reached. There was this old wooden rocking horse my dad bought from a garage sale. It was chipped and kind of creepy. The paint worn off its face so it always looked like it was staring straight through me. But I liked it. It was one of the few toys I didn't mind leaving in the basement. One evening, right before sunset, I went downstairs to get it. I remember the light bulb flickering when I pulled the string. It made this soft, buzzing sound, almost like it was struggling to stay on. I walked over to the rocking horse, noticing it wasn't where I'd left it. It was turned toward the stairs, angled like it was waiting for me. I didn't think much of it. I was a kid. Things got moved around all the time. So I grabbed the handle on its neck and pulled it toward me. That's when I heard it. A faint tapping sound coming from deeper in the basement. Slow, rhythmic, like something knocking on wood. My first thought was that something had fallen, but the tapping didn't stop. It kept going. Tap, tap, tap. Steady, too steady for something random. I remember freezing completely. My breathing went shallow, and every tiny hair on my arm stood up. I tried convincing myself it was pipes, or maybe the old cabinet shifting. But then the rocking horse moved. Just a small movement, a gentle tilt forward like someone had touched it. The tapping stopped at the exact same moment. I let go of the horse and backed toward the stairs without looking away from it. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe. When my foot hit the second step, the light bulb flickered again, buzzing louder this time. And in that brief moment of dimming, I heard something else, a whisper, too soft to understand, too close to ignore. I ran upstairs so fast I almost slipped, and for a while I tried to pretend nothing happened. Kids get scared easily, right? Maybe the tapping was just my imagination and the whisper was just the house settling. But that night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing the rocking horse tilting forward like someone had nudged it. I kept replaying that whisper in my head, trying to figure out if it had formed an actual word. Around midnight, I finally drifted off, but I woke up again to a familiar sound, a soft creak. Our hallway floor always creaked when someone walked on it. I assumed it was my dad going to the bathroom, so I stayed still and listened. But the footsteps didn't sound like my dad's. They were too light, too slow, almost cautious. The steps stopped right outside my door. I held my breath, waiting for the knob to turn or for someone to knock, but nothing happened. It was just silence. Heavy silence, the kind that presses against your ears. I stared at the door, watching the bottom gap for shadows. I remember thinking that maybe I should call for my mom, but my voice felt stuck in my throat. Then, just as I convinced myself it was my imagination, I heard breathing. Not loud, not raspy, just soft, steady breathing right outside my door, like someone was standing there with their face inches from the wood. I pulled my blanket up to my chin and curled inward. My heart was beating so fast it almost hurt. I remember squeezing my eyes shut so tightly they stung. The breathing went on for what felt like minutes. Then the floor creaked again and the footsteps moved away. I didn't sleep after that. I waited under my blanket until the sunlight came through my window. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I didn't want my parents to think I was being dramatic. But something felt off in the house. Every sound seemed sharper. The creaks were louder. The air felt colder. My mom asked me to go down to the basement to get a box of books she needed for work. I didn't want to, but I didn't know how to refuse without sounding scared. So I went. I stood at the top of the stairs for a long moment, staring down into the dim light. The string for the bulb swayed slightly, like someone had just walked past it. When I finally forced myself to go down, step by step, my hands were shaking. The light buzzed weakly again when I pulled it. I looked around, trying to reassure myself everything was normal. Then I saw it. The rocking horse was facing the stairs again, but this time, it wasn't where I had left it. It was sitting on the third step from the bottom, angled upward, like it was climbing toward me. I froze on the staircase, one foot lifted in the air, my hand gripping the railing so tightly my fingers hurt. The rocking horse wasn't supposed to be there. It was too heavy for me to lift at that age, and my parents never touched it because they said it gave them the creeps. But there it was, sitting on the steps like it had been waiting. The house felt so quiet, it was like my ears were ringing. I didn't dare move. I didn't even dare breathe. I kept staring at the horse, at the way its wooden head pointed upward, almost as if it were looking at me. I backed up slowly, step by step, until I reached the top of the stairs. My heartbeat was pounding so loudly I could feel it in my teeth. I wanted to run to my parents, to scream for them, but something in me said, "Don't. I can't. Explain it." It felt like if I made too much noise, something worse would happen. So I stayed silent. Later that afternoon, I finally told my mom that I didn't want the rocking horse in the house anymore. I didn't say why, I just said it scared me. She looked confused, but she agreed to move it into the shed in the backyard. When she tried to pick it up, she struggled. She even laughed a little, saying she forgot how heavy it was. She had to drag it across the floor just to get it outside. There's no way I could have carried it to the stairs, and there's no way it could have moved on its own. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to think about it anymore. For a few days, things went back to normal. No footsteps, no breathing, no whispering. I started to believe it was over. Then one night, maybe a week later, I woke up to a familiar sound, creaking, light, slow, moving down the hallway toward my room. I sat up, my chest tightening, and listened. The footsteps stopped outside my door again. My throat went dry. I stared at the gap under the door, just like before. But this time, instead of breathing, I heard something else. A faint, wooden knock, slow, rhythmic, like something solid tapping the floor. Knock, knock, knock. I felt tears gather in my eyes. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I was paralyzed with fear. Then, through the silence, I heard a soft scraping sound. Something being dragged across the floor. Something heavy. Something wooden. I don't know how long it went on. I don't know when I passed out. But in the morning, when I opened my door, the hallway was empty. The floor was undisturbed, like nothing happened. But later, when my dad went to the shed for his tools, he asked me if I had moved anything, because the rocking horse wasn't inside anymore. To this day, we never found it. And sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and everyone's asleep, I still hear that slow wooden knocking somewhere outside my window. I still don't understand what happened that summer, and honestly, I'm not sure I ever want to. It's strange how childhood memories blur around the edges, but that one week is crystal clear in my mind, like my brain refuses to let it fade. Maybe because deep down, part of me knows it wasn't just my imagination. I was 9 when my parents sent me to stay with my aunt for a while. She lived in this old wooden house at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, the kind where the streetlights flickered at night, and the wind always seemed to move through the trees a little too gently, like someone whispering secrets through the leaves. Her house had that constant scent of dust and old books, mixed with something damp that I never could place. The floors creaked even when no one was walking on them, and every door had a hinge that groaned as if it hated being opened. My room was at the end of a long hallway, separated from the rest of the house. The moment I stepped inside, I felt something off. The air was colder, not freezing, just a few degrees lower than the hallway, enough for me to feel it on my skin. There was a small wooden chair in the corner facing the window, and for some reason, it bothered me. It looked like someone had been sitting there just before I entered. The first night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps, slow, careful, like someone trying not to be heard. At first, I thought it was my aunt, but the steps were too light, almost childlike. They moved up and down the hallway, pausing every few seconds near my door. I held my breath and listened, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The footsteps stopped right outside my room. I remember gripping the blanket so tight my hands went numb. I could hear my own breathing, shaky and uneven. Then, through the silence, the floorboard just outside the door creaked again, as if someone put their full weight on it. I didn't open my eyes for the rest of the night. The next morning, I tried convincing myself it was the house settling. Old houses make sounds, right? But when I stepped into the hallway, something made my stomach tighten. The wooden floor outside my door had a long, thin scratch on it, fresh, pale-colored, as if something had been dragged across it during the night. My aunt noticed me staring and just shrugged, saying the wood had always been worn out. But I knew that scratch hadn't been there before. I had looked at that hallway carefully the day I arrived. That evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that the house was somehow watching me. The air felt too still. Every shadow seemed to breathe on its own. I kept glancing toward that wooden chair in the corner, half expecting it to be moved. And I swear, at one point, I noticed the back legs weren't aligned with the floor anymore, like it had shifted an inch, just an inch. But I knew it hadn't been like that before. When night came, I tried to sleep facing the wall, away from the chair, but it didn't help. The house felt louder than the night before. The wind tapped against the window. The floor creaked randomly, like someone pacing in circles. But the worst part was the breathing. Soft, shaky, too close. At first, I thought it was my own. But then I realized whatever I was hearing was slower, deeper, as if someone was standing just a few feet away, trying not to make a sound. My heart started racing so fast, it felt like it was trying to escape my chest. I pulled the blanket over my head, even though every part of me knew that was useless. The breathing didn't stop. It only grew more uneven, like whoever it was struggling to stay quiet, like they were excited or nervous. I remember whispering to myself that I was dreaming. I kept repeating it in my head, but my body wouldn't believe it. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. Then came the whisper, right beside the bed. A faint, broken sound, like a child learning to speak. It said my name. I froze so completely, I'm not sure I even blinked for a full minute. The whisper didn't come again, but the breathing lingered long after. I didn't sleep at all that night. I barely made it through the next day. Every sound in that house felt sharper, like the walls were waiting for me to be alone again. I kept asking my aunt strange questions without really explaining myself. Things like if she ever heard noises at night, or if there were animals in the attic. She just laughed it off and said old houses have personalities. I didn't have the courage to tell her that whatever was in that house wasn't part of its personality. It felt separate, intentional, aware. By the time night came again, I was already shaking. I remember wishing I could sleep in the living room with the lights on, but I knew how weird that would look. So I forced myself back into that small bedroom, telling myself I'd stay awake until sunrise. No sleeping, no closing my eyes, just staying alert. But sometime after midnight, exhaustion won. my head dropped forward. And the next thing I remember is waking up to the sound of movement. Slow, deliberate movement. Something was dragging across the floor again. Not fast, not heavy, just steady, like someone was pulling something tiny and fragile. I held my breath and listened. The sound stopped. Silence filled the room, thick enough to feel. Then, the small wooden chair in the corner creaked. I didn't want to look. Everything in my body begged me not to, but my eyes moved on their own. My heart was pounding so hard it made my vision shake. And when I finally turned my head, the chair was no longer in the corner. It was beside my bed, just inches away. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I felt my entire childhood fear crash back into me all at once. Then, slowly, the chair tilted, like someone invisible had climbed onto it. The wood groaned softly, bending under weight that wasn't there. That same whisper from the night before brushed the side of my ear, so close it felt warm. It said, "Don't leave." I panicked. I shot out of the bed so fast, I tripped over my own feet and slammed onto the hallway floor. I didn't look back. I didn't care about the noise I made. I ran straight to the living room and spent the rest of the night shaking on the couch with every lamp turned on. My aunt found me in the morning. I lied and told her I felt sick and needed to go home early. She didn't question it. Here's the part I never tell anyone. A week after I left, my aunt called to ask if I'd taken anything from the room because she noticed something odd. The chair, the one I'd been terrified of. It was back in the corner again, but she also found small handprints on the seat. Not hers, not mine. Too small to belong to either of us. She wanted to know if I had any explanation. I still don't, and that's why I've never gone back to that house. I don't know why this memory has been coming back to me lately, but every time I think about it, I feel that same cold pressure on my chest that I felt as a kid. This happened when I was around 9 years old, during a time when my parents were working late almost every night. I spent most evenings alone in our old house, which always felt too quiet once the sun went down. The house had these wooden floors that creaked even when nobody was walking on them. Sometimes I'd be sitting in the living room watching TV, and I'd hear a soft pop from the hallway or a slow groan from the ceiling, like the house was stretching or breathing in the dark. Back then, I always tried to convince myself it was normal for old houses to make noise. But there was something different about the way this house sounded. Something intentional. One night, I was in my room playing with my toys when the hallway light started flickering. It wasn't unusual. The bulb had been doing that for weeks, but for some reason, the flicker seemed slower this time, like it was pulsing instead of blinking. I remember staring at the thin line of light under my door, watching it brighten and dim like a heartbeat. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, slow, dragging footsteps coming down the hallway. Not the firm, heavy steps of my parents. Not the quick tapping sound I made when I ran around. These were different. Longer, heavier, almost uneven, like someone was limping. My entire body froze. My hands were still in the air, holding a small action figure, but my fingers went numb around it. My breathing got shallow, loud enough in my own ears that I wondered if whatever was outside could hear it too. The footsteps stopped right in front of my bedroom door. I remember the silence afterward. It felt thick, almost like the air had weight to it. My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my stomach. I kept staring at the door, waiting for the knob to turn or the door to shake or something. Anything. But instead, something slid across the floor on the other side. A scraping sound. Slow, deliberate, like someone was dragging their hand or nails along the wood. Then a voice whispered my name. Soft, breathless, right at the bottom of the door. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just sat there shaking until the light finally stopped flickering and the house went quiet again. At least I thought it went quiet, because a few seconds later, something breathed in, long and shaky, like it was right on the other side of the door. Listening, I didn't open my door that night. I just sat there on the floor with my back pressed against the wall, knees pulled up to my chest, listening to every tiny sound the house made. After a while, the breathing faded. The footsteps never came back. The hallway light stayed steady. But even when everything seemed normal again, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still standing out there, waiting for me, to make a sound. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because the next thing I remember is my mom shaking my shoulder the next morning, asking why I was sleeping on the floor. I lied and said I was building something with my toys and got tired. She didn't question it. Neither of my parents ever really noticed things like that. For a few days, nothing strange happened. I convinced myself it was just my imagination, mixed with being alone too often. But then, on a Saturday morning, when both my parents were home, my mom asked me to bring her laundry basket from her bedroom. I didn't think anything of it, so I went upstairs. But the moment I stepped into the hallway, something felt wrong. It smelled like dust. Thick, old dust. The kind that sits untouched in attics. I don't know how to explain it, but the air felt heavier, like it was packed with something invisible. The hallway light flickered once when I walked under it. Just once. But that was enough to make my skin crawl. When I got to my parents' room, I noticed something odd. Their bedroom door was open wider than usual, like someone had pushed it too hard. And on the floor, right in the center of the doorway, was one of my toys. A small plastic soldier. The same one I had been holding the night I heard the footsteps. I hadn't brought it upstairs. I hadn't even touched it since that night. Seeing it there, placed so neatly like someone had set it down with purpose, made my stomach twist. I slowly leaned down to pick it up, but before my fingers touched it, I heard a noise behind me. A faint whisper, not words. More like the sound of someone trying to speak, but barely managing it. I froze. My whole body turned cold at once. I felt a warm puff of air hit the back of my neck. I didn't even breathe. I just stood there, absolutely certain that someone was standing right behind me. I wanted to scream, or run, or even turn around, but my legs wouldn't move. It felt like the air itself was holding me in place. Then I heard it again, a tiny exhale that brushed the side of my ear. That was enough to break whatever held me frozen. I bolted down the stairs so fast, I nearly slipped. My parents looked confused when I rushed into the living room. My mom asked if something scared me, but I just shook my head. I didn't want them to think I was making things up. But as I sat on the couch trying to steady my breathing, I realized something. Something that made my hands shake. That whisper I heard behind me upstairs. It sounded exactly like my voice. I tried to forget what happened, but it stayed with me like a weight I couldn't shake off. For the next week, I refused to go upstairs alone. I slept with my door wide open and the hallway light shining directly into my room. But that didn't stop the feeling that something was watching me. Not from the shadows, but from the corners, from places just out of sight. Like when I brushed my teeth and caught a shape behind me in the mirror for half a second. Or when I played in the living room and heard footsteps on the second floor, even though both my parents were sitting right beside me. I stopped mentioning anything to them. I was a kid, and kids aren't believed when they say things like this. The worst part happened one evening just before sunset. I was in my room, sitting on the floor sorting through my toys. I remember the light coming in through my window had turned orange, filling the room with that warm, almost comforting glow. For the first time in a while, I felt calm. Then I heard it, my own voice, calling my name from the hallway. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry. It sounded exactly like me, but tired, like I had just woken up from a deep sleep. I froze, staring at the open doorway. The voice called again, a little clearer this time, like someone was walking closer. I knew my parents were outside in the backyard. I had seen them through the window minutes earlier. No one else was home. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just watched the hallway slowly darken as the sun kept going down. Then something stepped into view. At first, I thought it was me. The shape was my height, my build. The outline looked exactly like me standing there in the dim hallway. But I couldn't see a face. It was like the shadows clung to it, hiding every detail no matter how hard I stared. The shape leaned slightly into the doorway, as if trying to get a better look at me. Then it spoke again in my voice, but the tone was wrong this time. Not tired, not curious, hungry. I scrambled backward until I hit the wall, my heartbeat pounding so loud, it felt like it filled the whole room. The thing in the doorway tilted its head, slowly, like it was studying me. Its shoulders lifted with a breath I could hear from across the room. A long inhale, a slow exhale, almost a sigh. Then it took one step into my room. That broke me. I screamed louder than I ever had in my life. My parents rushed in seconds later, out of breath and confused. The moment they stepped into the hallway, the thing was gone, vanished, like it had never been there. They comforted me, but they didn't believe me. They told me it was a nightmare, even though I was wide awake, even though I had been staring at that thing directly. We moved out of that house a few months later because my dad got a job in another city. I never told him the real reason I was happy to leave. I never told anyone. But sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, I swear I still hear it. Footsteps outside my door, breathing that isn't mine. And every so often, when I'm half asleep, I hear my own voice whispering my name from somewhere in the dark, and it sounds closer every time. I didn't realize how strange my childhood was until I got older and understood that not everyone grew up hearing someone walk around their room at night. I used to think it was normal. The soft creaking of the floorboards beside my bed, the slow shift of weight, like someone leaning in just close enough to listen to me breathe. This happened years ago, and I still don't have an explanation for any of it. I just remember that it always started the same way, with that cold feeling crawling up my back long before the sounds even began. I was 8 when it got bad. My bedroom was at the end of a narrow hallway, the kind where the lights flickered no matter how many times my dad changed the bulbs. At night, the whole house would settle and groan like something heavy was dragging itself through the walls. My parents said it was just an old house. Wood expands and contracts, that sort of thing. But wood doesn't whisper, and it definitely doesn't breathe. I remember the first night I heard it clearly. I had just turned off my lamp, and I could still see the outline of my toys on the floor, just barely illuminated by the hallway glow. I was drifting off when I heard soft footsteps outside my door. Not heavy adult steps, not my dad. These were lighter, deliberate, like a child taking slow, careful steps. I opened my eyes, heart picking up in my chest. I listened, trying not to breathe too loudly. The steps stopped right outside my room. Then there was a faint exhale, long and shaky, like someone was calming themselves down. I froze. I didn't call for my parents. I remember thinking that maybe if I stayed perfectly still, whoever or whatever it was would go away. But then the doorknob twitched, just once. A small rattling sound, like someone resting their hand on it and pressing gently. I whispered my own name in my head, just to ground myself. But right when I did, something on the other side whispered it too. Same tone, same softness, except the voice trembled like it had been waiting a long time to say it. I yanked the covers over my head and felt tears spill down my face. The breathing outside the door grew uneven, almost excited. Then it slowly moved away, footsteps fading into the darkness. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just lay there, listening, afraid that if I blinked, the door would open. For weeks after that, I slept with the covers pulled up to my chin, staring at the door like it might suddenly burst open. Every night, without fail, the footsteps returned. Always the same rhythm, the same careful pacing, the same uneasy breathing on the other side. Sometimes it stopped right at the bottom of my door and just stayed there, like whoever it was deciding whether to come inside. Other nights, it walked up and down the hallway, pausing only when it reached my room, as if checking to make sure I was still there. I told my parents once. My dad brushed it off and said kids imagine things. My mom looked alarmed for a second, but then she said maybe I was hearing the pipes. I knew it wasn't pipes. Pipes don't say your name. The worst part was that it started happening earlier, not just in the middle of the night, but around dusk, when the sun dipped just low enough to fill my room with that heavy blue shadow. I remember sitting on the floor playing with my plastic dinosaurs when I felt the air in the hallway shift. You know that feeling when someone stands behind you and you sense them before you hear them? That's what it was like. The footsteps were soft but unmistakable, slow, dragging a little. I turned toward the doorway, even though I didn't want to. Nothing was there, but I could hear the breathing, closer this time, almost inside the room. And there was this faint whispering, but it wasn't saying words. It sounded like someone trying to hum a tune through cracked lips. I backed myself against the wall, gripping my toys so tight my knuckles hurt. My heartbeat was loud enough that I thought whoever was in the hallway could hear it. The breathing grew more frantic, almost panicked, like whoever was there was desperate for me to respond. Then the humming stopped. The footsteps rushed forward so fast that I genuinely thought someone was about to run into the room. I braced, squeezing my eyes shut, but when I opened them, the doorway was completely empty, silent. The air still, like nothing had been there at all. That night, I slept with the lamp on, but even with the warm light filling my room, I could still hear it. The faint creak near the foot of my bed, a slow inhale, then a whisper, so soft I wasn't sure if I really heard it or just imagined it after all the fear. It said, "Don't turn around." I didn't. I couldn't. I stayed frozen until morning, afraid of what might be standing behind me. I still don't know why I finally got the courage to look. Maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe I'd just reached the point where not knowing felt worse than knowing. But a few nights after that whisper, the footsteps changed. They weren't cautious anymore. They weren't curious. They were excited. I heard them before I even fell asleep, pacing fast, almost skipping down the hallway. My heart dropped instantly. I was lying with my face toward the wall, the blankets pulled up, trying to pretend I didn't hear anything. But the steps came right up to my door, stopped, and then the doorknob turned. Not fast, not slow, just a small, casual twist, like whoever was on the other side was testing it. I felt my entire body lock up. My breathing became so shallow, it hurt. The door didn't open, but whoever was out there tapped it. Just once. A single tap, like a finger gently knocking. Then a voice said, "I know you're awake." It wasn't a child's voice. It wasn't my parents'. It wasn't even a whisper. It sounded like someone speaking through a mouth that hadn't been used in a long time, dry and strained, like something scraping over gravel. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. My eyes burned from staying open too long, staring at the same little pattern in the wallpaper. I remember thinking that if I stayed still enough, maybe it would go away. But the breathing on the other side of the door grew louder, heavier, until it felt like it filled the entire room. And then I felt it again, the shift in the air, the same one from before. The sensation of someone standing so close behind you that you can feel their breath on the back of your neck. Except I hadn't heard footsteps. I hadn't heard the door open. Whatever it was now inside my room. I felt the mattress dip behind me, like someone was kneeling on it. I could hear the faintest hum, that same broken tune, vibrating through the mattress. My heartbeat was so loud, I thought I was going to pass out. I squeezed my eyes shut tighter and tried to pretend none of it was real, that it was just another nightmare. Then something cold touched the back of my shoulder. Not a hand, not a fingertip. It felt more like someone dragging the edge of a knuckle or the back of a bone across my skin. And then, right next to my ear, the voice whispered again, "Found you." I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember is sunlight filling my room. My door was wide open. My parents said they never heard anything, never saw anything. They said maybe I had gotten up and opened the door myself, half asleep. But I know I didn't. I moved out of that house years ago, but sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet and the air feels too still, I hear it again. The faint hum, the dragging footsteps, the slow inhale behind me, and every time I tell myself the same thing. Don't turn around. I still don't know why the memories hit me hardest at night, but this one always comes back the moment everything around me goes quiet. It happened when I was around 9 years old, back when my family lived in a small rented house at the edge of town. The place wasn't haunted or anything, at least that's what my parents always said. But even as a kid, I felt something off about it. The hallways were too narrow, the ceilings too low, and the floors creaked like someone was always shifting their weight on the other side of the room. My bedroom was at the end of the hallway. At night, when the lights were off, the hallway looked like a long tunnel leading into nothing. I used to sleep with my door half open because I hated feeling trapped. I told myself it made me feel safer, like I could hear Mom or Dad if they needed me. But really, I think I wanted to keep an eye on the darkness out there. I don't know why. I just did. The night everything started, I remember waking up to this soft sound. It was so faint at first, I thought I was dreaming. A slow, dragging sound, like someone pulling their feet across the floor. My heart wasn't racing yet, not at that point. Kids hear weird things all the time. Houses make noises. But the dragging kept going. A pause, then another dragging step. It was coming from the hallway. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and held my breath without even meaning to. The air in my room felt heavier the longer I listened. My ears were straining so hard they hurt. I tried calling for my mom, quietly at first, then a little louder. No answer. The dragging stopped right outside my door. not moving, not stepping away, just stopping. That was the moment my heartbeat started pounding so hard I could hear it echo in my ears. I didn't dare blink. Through the crack of my half-open door, I swear I saw something shift. Just a slow, dark shape leaning slightly into view. No face, no details. Just something standing there, watching. I remember trying to convince myself it was my dad. Maybe he was checking on me. Maybe he couldn't sleep either. But my dad never stood still like that. He always poked his head in or whispered my name. Whoever or whatever was outside my door wasn't doing anything except breathing. I could hear it now. Slow, uneven breaths, like each inhale scraped through a dry throat. I tried to speak, but my voice came out thin and shaky. I whispered "Dad" again, and the breathing stopped instantly, like I had caught someone doing something they weren't supposed to. For a few seconds, everything went silent, completely silent. Even the usual hum of the refrigerator down the hall felt like it had faded away. And then, as if responding to my whisper, the door slowly pushed open another inch. Not a lot, just enough to show me that whoever was there had touched it. A cold wave rolled through my chest. My eyes started watering, not because I was crying, but because I wasn't blinking. I couldn't. I remember feeling my fingers go numb as I gripped my blanket like it was some kind of shield. The door didn't move again. No more dragging, no more breathing, just that crack a little wider than before. Minutes passed. It felt like hours. Finally, I forced myself to get up. I don't know where the courage came from. I just remember thinking, if I don't check now, I'll never sleep again. My legs felt like they were made of pins and needles. Every step toward the door felt like pushing through water. My heartbeat wasn't even beating normally anymore. It stuttered, like it didn't know if it should keep going. When I reached the door, I put my hand on the wood. It was cold, not nighttime room cold, but cold like metal left outside during winter. I leaned forward just enough to look into the hallway. It was empty. But the thing that terrified me wasn't the emptiness. It was the floor. There were faint streak marks on the wood, right in front of my doorway, as if someone had been standing there, turning, waiting. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared at those faint streaks on the floor, trying to make sense of them. They weren't scratches like from a pet, and they weren't smudges like someone dragged their feet. They looked more like something had been slowly pivoting in place, grinding into the wood as it shifted its weight from side to side. That detail bothered me more than anything. Kids don't think much about danger, but even then, I understood that whatever had been outside my room wasn't standing normally. I backed into my room without taking my eyes off the hallway. My breathing was uneven, and every inhale felt tight, like the air itself was getting heavier. I climbed back into bed and pulled the blanket up to my chin. I kept watching the door, waiting for it to move again, but nothing happened. At some point, I must have fallen asleep. When I woke up, sunlight was coming through my window, and the hallway looked perfectly normal. The streak marks were gone. My first thought was that my parents must have cleaned or polished the floor early in the morning, but that didn't make sense. They wouldn't wake up before dawn just to wipe down that single spot. I asked them anyway. My dad laughed it off, saying maybe I dreamed the whole thing. My mom said I probably just needed to stop reading scary books before bed. I tried to let it go, but every time I passed that stretch of hallway, I felt something like static crawling across my skin. Years later, when I was a teenager, we replaced the flooring. While the workers peeled up the old boards, I walked past and froze when I saw the underside. There were marks carved deep into the wood. Long, curved grooves, not made by tools, not made by furniture. They looked almost like finger marks, too long, too thin, and far too deep for any normal person to make. One of the workers noticed me staring and asked what happened there. I didn't have an answer. I still don't. Sometimes, when I think about that night, I swear I can hear that slow, uneven breathing again. Not loud, just enough to make me wonder if something ever really left that hallway. If you want another story with a different theme or style, just tell me. I still don't know how to explain what happened that summer, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to. The memory feels like something I'm supposed to leave alone, like a wound that never healed right. But every now and then, usually late at night, I catch myself thinking about it all over again. The sounds, the shadows, the strange feeling that I wasn't alone back then, even when I should have been. I was 8 years old when my parents sent me to stay with my aunt for a few weeks. She lived in an old wooden house on the edge of a small town, the kind of place where the air felt colder inside than outside. The floorboards were uneven and creaked under the slightest weight, and the hallway lights flickered no matter how many times she changed the bulbs. I remember thinking the whole house felt tired, like it had been holding its breath for too long. My room was at the end of the hall, next to a narrow closet with a door that never fully closed. I could push it shut, but a thin strip of darkness always remained. Every night, I tried to ignore it. Every night, I failed. The first strange thing happened on my third night there. I had just gotten into bed when I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Slow, dragging footsteps, like someone who didn't want to wake anyone. I assumed it was my aunt going to the bathroom, so I didn't think much of it at first. But the footsteps stopped right in front of my door and stayed there, not moving, not retreating, just standing. I held my breath and listened. After a few seconds, I heard something else, a faint, shaky exhale, the sound of someone breathing on the other side of the door. My heartbeat started pounding so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I wanted to call out, to ask if it was my aunt, but my voice felt trapped somewhere inside me. The breathing continued, slow and uneven, like whoever it was didn't quite know how to breathe normally. Then, just as quietly as it started, it stopped. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I asked my aunt if she'd been in the hallway during the night. She laughed a little and shook her head, saying she'd slept straight through until her alarm went off. I didn't tell her what I'd heard. I didn't want her to think I was being dramatic, or worse, lying. But the doubt stuck with me all day. If it wasn't her, then who had been standing outside my room? That night, I stayed awake longer, listening. The house felt different after midnight, like it settled into a slower heartbeat. The walls cracked softly, the wood expanded and groaned, and the wind tapped gently against the glass. I tried to tell myself that a kid's imagination could turn anything into something scary. But deep down, I knew what I'd heard wasn't my imagination. Around 2 a.m, the hallway light flickered, almost like it was calling for my attention. I sat up in bed and stared at the thin line of dim yellow light beneath my door. Everything was silent for a long time. Too silent. The kind of silence that feels like the world is waiting for something. Then the footsteps started again. They were slower this time, heavier. Each step pressed into the old wooden floor, making the planks groan in protest. I pulled my blanket up to my chin and tried not to breathe too loudly. My chest tightened, and I could feel my pulse in my ears. Whoever or whatever was walking toward my room wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. The steps stopped at my door, exactly like before. I waited, frozen, staring at that faint glow of hallway light. I didn't hear breathing this time. Instead, I heard a soft tapping on the door. At first, it was just one tap, then another, then 3 in a row. Slow, deliberate taps, like knuckles brushing the wood. My throat felt dry, and I forced myself to whisper something, anything. "Who's there?" Silence followed. Heavy, suffocating silence. And then, from inside the closet next to my bed, came a faint whisper. Here, my whole body locked up. The closet door, the one that never fully closed, clicked softly, as if something inside had touched it. I didn't sleep that night either. I spent the whole next day trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whisper. Kids hear things all the time, especially in unfamiliar houses. That's what I kept repeating to myself, over and over, like a mantra that might make it true. But every time I walked past that closet in daylight, I felt something cold brush along my spine, like the memory of being watched hadn't quite faded. By the time night came, I was already exhausted, but the idea of sleeping made my stomach twist. I left the hallway light on again, hoping it would make things feel normal. It didn't. The moment I turned off my bedroom light, the shadows in the room felt heavier, thicker, like they clung to the corners in ways they shouldn't. I climbed into bed and kept my eyes open, pretending I was just resting. For a while, nothing happened, just the usual settling sounds of the house and a car passing outside every now and then. I started thinking maybe I'd get through the night peacefully. Then the closet door shifted. It didn't swing open. It didn't creak loudly. It just moved a few centimeters, enough for the gap to widen and for the darkness inside to look deeper than the rest of the room. I froze instantly. My heartbeat quickened, thudding so hard I worried it might give me away. I listened. At first, I didn't hear anything. Then, ever so softly, the sound of breathing came from inside. Slow, calm, steady breathing. Not like someone was scared, more like someone was comfortable being there, like they'd been there for a long time. I whispered again, barely audible. "Please stop." The breathing paused. For a moment, I thought whatever was in there had gone. But then something stepped out. I didn't see it clearly. All I caught was the shape of something low to the floor, like a child crawling on hands and knees, moving quickly across my room toward the hallway door. The hallway light flickered as the shadow passed, and the temperature in the room dropped so fast that I could see my breath. The thing didn't look at me. It didn't try to touch me. It just slipped out of my room, into the hallway, and the footsteps echoed down the corridor, fading into nothing. The next morning, my aunt casually mentioned that the old nursery down the hall had been cold all night. "Freezing," she said, like someone left the window open. But the window wasn't open, and to this day, I still don't know what climbed out of my closet that night. I don't know why this memory decided to crawl back into my head after all these years, but once it surfaced, I couldn't shake it off. It happened when I was around 8, at the house where my mom used to leave me during her night shifts. It wasn't a babysitter or a relative. It was just a neighbor, an older woman who kept to herself and offered to help because she loved the sound of children in the house. Back then, I didn't think anything of it. Now, I wish I had paid more attention to the strange details. The house always felt colder than the outside, even in the middle of summer. The floors creaked in long, slow stretches, like someone was dragging their heel just out of sight. She would put me to bed in her guest room, a small space with faded yellow wallpaper and a nightstand lamp that flickered whenever the wind blew. Except the window didn't open, and there was never any wind. On the first night, I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house adjust. At least that's what I told myself. But the sounds weren't random. It was a rhythm. Light tapping, then a pause, then a soft shuffle. I could hear it right outside the door, like someone pacing very slowly. I pulled the blanket to my chin and tried to breathe quietly. Every inhale felt too loud. Every exhale made the room colder. I thought it was her checking on me, but I didn't hear footsteps moving away. It was just there, standing, waiting. Then something whispered. It wasn't a word, more like a breath pushing through clenched teeth. It came from the bottom of the bed, even though I hadn't heard anyone come inside. My whole body locked up. My heartbeat was so strong it made the mattress tremble beneath me. Or maybe that was just my panic. I remember squeezing my eyes shut and whispering into the pillow, asking whatever it was to go away. I didn't get an answer, but the tapping outside the door stopped, and the closet door in the corner clicked softly like it had been nudged from the inside. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, the neighbor asked if I'd slept well. I lied and said yes, even though my eyes burned and my hands wouldn't stop trembling. She just smiled a little too long, like she already knew the truth, but wanted to hear me say it anyway. That smile bothered me more than the noises from the night before. The second night was worse. She tucked me in earlier than my mom ever did, and turned off the hallway light before closing the door. The room fell into that dim, sickly glow from the flickering lamp. I kept telling myself I was imagining things, that I was just a kid with an overactive fear of the dark. But then came the breathing. It was faint at first, shallow, uneven, not mine. I held my breath to make sure, and the other breathing kept going. Slow inhale, wet exhale. It came from near the closet. I could picture the narrow slats of the closet door, the shadows. Behind them, the dark space where anything could hide, if it really wanted to. My chest tightened so much it hurt. I sat up, gripping the blanket, listening harder. The breathing stopped, but in the silence, the mattress dipped beside my knees, just a little, like someone had rested their weight there. I froze. I didn't look. I didn't dare. I stared at the lamp instead, watching it flicker faster, almost like it was reacting to whatever else was in the room with me. Every time the bulb dimmed, the shadow stretched just a bit farther across the floor. Then I heard the whisper again. This time it was closer, right next to my ear. A low rasp, a soft sound that didn't form any real word, but I swear it was trying to say something. My whole body broke into cold sweat. I could feel it slide down my back, pooling under my shirt. I wanted to scream, but my voice got stuck somewhere in my throat. When the whisper stopped, the closet door creaked open by an inch, just enough to see darkness move inside. Not a shape, not a person, just movement, like the dark itself shifted. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran out of the room, out of the house, barefoot, straight into the night air. The neighbor didn't chase after me. She didn't even open the door. She just let me leave. I didn't go back the next night, or the night after. My parents got home late on the third day, exhausted but grateful the neighbor had helped. I didn't tell them what happened. I tried. I really did. But every time I opened my mouth, the memory of that whisper pressed against my ear again. My voice would crack, and I'd shake my head and say it was nothing. They believed me. That was the worst part. They believed me because I'd always been the quiet kid, the one who didn't make trouble. They didn't notice how I avoided the neighbor's house, how I crossed the yard in a wide arc just to avoid seeing her windows. Weeks passed. I thought whatever happened was over. Then one night, close to midnight, I woke up to a familiar sound, breathing, not from inside my room this time, from outside my window. Slow, wet, the same uneven rhythm I tried so hard to forget. I pulled the blanket to my chin and held still, listening as the breathing got louder, then stopped completely. Knuckles on the glass, I forced myself to look, not fully, just enough to see a silhouette against the curtain. Small, child-sized, unmoving. My heart felt like it was punching through my ribs. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping it would go away, hoping it wasn't real. Then the voice whispered, not beside my ear this time, right outside the window. The same rasp, the same low murmur that tried to form a word. But this time, I understood it, or at least, I think I did. It said my name. I bolted out of bed and ran to my parents' room, shaking so hard I couldn't even explain what was happening. My dad checked the window. Nothing there. No footprints, no marks, no sign that anyone had ever been outside. But when we walked back to my room, the curtain was moving, not from wind. The window was closed. It moved like someone had just been standing behind it and slipped away at the last second. I'm older now, but sometimes late at night, I still hear the faintest breathing near my window. Always the same rhythm, always the same uneven exhale. And sometimes I wonder, did something follow me from that house? Or did it never belong to the neighbor's house at all? Did it belong to me?